listening to In-Fisherman Storyline, North America's top voice in multi-species freshwater angling. Here is your host, Thomas Allen.
Hey folks, Thomas Allen here with In-Fisherman, and before we get started today, I wanted to pass along some exciting news as we welcome LL Bean as presenting sponsor of In-Fisherman Storyline podcast. LL Bean is an iconic brand known for its quality outdoor gear and a deeply rooted passion for everything outside. Not to mention they make a pretty mean plaid flannel shirt. Check this thing out. Awesome. This partnership will bring more great stories, expert tips, and outdoor inspiration to anglers everywhere. LL Bean, we are glad to have you a part of this. So welcome to the palatial LL Bean Studios nestled atop the twin In-Fisherman Towers overlooking beautiful downtown Brainerd, Minnesota. Stay right there. A new episode of In-Fisherman Storyline presented by LL Bean is coming right up. Man, that's got a nice ring to it.
We're at a very special place, and we've got new friends, we've got projects that we've kicked off and completed, and this is what we call a road trip edition of In-Fisherman Storyline, where we sit down at a destination while we're creating content, have a conversation. It really, we don't know where it's going to go. We're not sure how long it's going to last, but the whole thing here is we're on the shores of Tobin Lake in Saskatchewan, and off to my left, the man wearing the plaid hat. He's definitely got a nice goatee. I asked him to grizz up a little bit, and he did not. Anthony Kleinwachter.
Had him here.
I feel like I added the syllables incorrectly. Kleinwachter.
That's perfect.
Kleinwachter?
I've been called way worse.
It was spelled wrong on whatever we watched last night. Anthony's from Fargo. He's on the Eskimo pro staff. Came up here to help us out with a content shoot. Proved to be invaluable. Don't let it go to your head, but... and we're at a very special place. We're here at Trails End Outfitters on Tobin Lake, and on the other side of me is Barry Prall. And Barry did not want to do this. I'm going to put him on the spot. We're going to get some stories. But first of all, Barry, thanks for having us, and thanks for sitting down.
Oh, it's my pleasure. A lot of fun this week.
And if you do hear an elk bugle go off, his phone is an elk bugle, and it's the greatest thing ever. So anyway, we're glad you're here. We're gonna talk a little bit about what we were doing, but we had an amazing day, and we came to shoot photos. We came to maybe get some video. We came to create some content. We spent a lot of time. If you spend any time on infisherman.com or flipping through the pages of In-Fisherman magazine, you'll know that there is a sizable amount of Saskatchewan content. And we've worked closely with our good friend Daryl at Tourism Saskatchewan. And he made this trip possible. A big shout out to Daryl. And we knew we were coming to something that was potentially going to be epic. And I think that we've probably crossed that line. We had a couple days. Today is the warmest, and I believe you said you saw 14?
Yeah.
So it did warm up a little bit.
Yeah, the wind was cool today, but yeah, it was warm. Warmest day.
It's coming out of the south, so it's going to warm up. I think it's going to be in the 30s this weekend.
Yeah.
So when you're in central Saskatchewan in February, you can just expect it to be terrible cold. But I think we set a record, or this area record low of 44.
It was close to 44 at night. Yeah, terrible.
Yeah, for the last 72 hours, we didn't see positive temperatures.
No, it was below zero. But if you're gonna create ice content in Saskatchewan, that's going to be a part of the game. And thank God we had the kind of shelters that we did from Eskimo, quilted, and we had warm heaters. We had heat hogs going. We had a buddy heater going, which you have to do, and a ton of hot hands. And by ton, I mean there's probably 3 pounds of hot hands hidden in a particular spot for the trip home, which is a joke that we'll maybe unveil later. But Anthony, let's talk a little bit about Eskimo. Let's talk about the rigors of making sure the product that you have on store shelves before it goes into the hands of ice anglers across the ice belt. It's got to get tested. It's got to get proven.
Absolutely. It's been really fun being a part of the Eskimo staff, being able to see the concepts come from the designs and into the production models and field testing those in conditions like we had, 35, 40 below, and being able to, trust your equipment, use the shelters, the augers, Eskimo and our Ion partner with Artisan there. We use the Ion Alpha all weekend, and up here, there's no shortage of ice, and it had no issues. I know a lot of people maybe think about destinations as not a place to bring a battery auger, but we hardly even had to use a second battery.
No, but what's interesting too is the 10-inch thing. I don't use a lot of 10-inch augers, or haven't over the years, simply because it takes that extra energy. You know, your standard hole is 8 inches, and that works in 90% of the situations you're probably going to be in the upper Midwest. But you come up to a place like this where there's 45-inch northern pike, and you don't have a long drive to catch lake trout. An 8-inch hole is just not going to cut it.
No, and the biggest thing is when you have that thick ice, being able to have a bigger hole to turn the head, get it up in the hole. I mean, I know we had multiple times where that was where the issue was this week, was just getting that fish turned into the hole. It just gives you that much more room to work with.
Well, we put things through its paces, and I think what I'm happy about is nothing's broken. As cold as it was, nothing broke, except for my 3,500 tackle trays. There's about 10 new holes in those things, but it doesn't take much when it's that cold for that stuff to break. But you know, when you're looking at, as a pro staff guy, you understand this. You want people to believe what you're telling them, and it's not just so that you get free gear. We know that's not the case. It's because you spend a great deal of time on the ice, and I spend quite a bit of time on the ice. But I can tell after 3 days with you, I don't even hold a candle to your time on the water, the frozen water. You do a lot.
Yeah, it's really fun to be able to have and use some of the best products in the industry. We stand behind the products. I think the biggest thing working with Eskimo and Ion, they have an amazing customer service team, awesome warranty on all of their products because they stand behind it. Mm-hmm. I mean, leading the industry in some of their warranties that they have for their augers and their shelters. Their customer service team is always great. If you do break something, I mean, replacement poles and blades for your augers, anything like that, it's really great.
Available.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the beginning of this trip. This is a kind of a funny story. So we've been planning to do something, and a lot of times as you're working with the tourism department, and Barry has a pretty busy schedule as well, you don't just show up someplace, or if you're planning it, you need to get ahead of the game. And so at infisherman.com, we've been creating custom articles about the ice fishing and the soft water fishing for years. And it just, I told Daryl, I'm like, the best route for us to go is to get there, create stuff on our own, and then we've got a stock of content, photos especially, that can nicely accent the stories and features that we write. And of course, if you want someone to open a website, they need to be attracted to the photo. So really getting something created was a goal on the website. But the other goal that we had was to shoot a cover for one or both of our upcoming ice guides, which will run late fall 2025. So we have tapped out at In-Fisherman a large quantity of photos that we've had on hand, and we just needed to get some more. So Tony at Eskimo set us up with some houses, set us up with some suits, and at first he was going to go, and Tony, I'm sorry you're not here, bro. You missed a hell of a time, but I kind of did a little internet stalking. Barry, you'll get a kick out of this. I had never met Anthony. I'd seen or listened to the podcast that you guys do. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But I kind of got in your Facebook. I kind of got in your Instagram. Kind of searched around a little bit. And I
slid into the DMs.
Slid into your DMs. And I'm like, brah, I need somebody just like you to come up and do this trip. And I'm sure you probably slid into mine. And I mean, I'm sure your wife gave you the listen. If he's a serial killer, you just open the door and jump out, kind of thing. But we'd never met, and I think there's no better way to begin a relationship or consummate a relationship than over a shallow hole, frozen hole, anyways, and big fish. And I think that
well, that and a 12-hour drive.
The 12-hour drive really helped us get here. But bottom line is, like, sometimes you just got to get to work. And I think when you find people that have, the common interest, but your passion for this sport is pretty impressive.
When I'm on the ice, I get zoned in. Like, there's blinders. If there's fish to catch, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's cold, hot, windy, blowing, conditions can be bad. I mean, I try to turn to lock in a little bit, and there's not too many fish that I'm going to let get by.
So what was your early days of being in the outdoors? Is there a time you ever weren't, or has it been since you were born pretty much?
I mean, some of my very earliest memories as a child is fishing for sunfish off the dock. I remember going to my great uncle's house. We were putting the kernel of corn on the hook, flipping it over the dock, catching fish. And so, I mean, from that age on, I've always been interested in the outdoors. I mean, fishing especially, but hunting and everything else that encompasses the outdoors. That's where you can find me.
Well, and we're in a pretty special place. At Trails End, Barry, I think you probably spend a lot more time guiding the hunting side or in the fall than ice fishing. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I don't do too much on the ice, but I like it. You know, it's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And especially when you're just here right on the shore, it's hard not to.
Oh man, we are so close to so much fun fishing. But so if as far as the hunting goes, I mean, Anthony, as I've learned, is a whitetail fanatic. I'm a whitetail fanatic. We could pretty easily make this a whitetail show, but we're not going to spend too much time on that. But you do offer hunts. What's the well, I mean, how many hunters do you have a year? That was a question I was going to ask you.
Well, I'm licensed for 25, and so I can do 25 a year, and we hunt right at the forest here, and it's all over bait, and mostly in November during the rut, you know, because a lot of these big bucks up in this area will go 100 miles north of here and just go into seclusion for their, you know, except for that month of November when they come back out, and that's the way we hunt them.
Well, I hunted Saskatchewan 15, 16, 17 years ago, and I grew up in Iowa where, you know, baiting is really looked down upon, and I think it makes sense there. But until I came here and hunted, I was kind of had that mindset. But then if you want to see deer, you need to have some food for them to come visit.
Yeah, that's right. Without baiting, it would be impossible for us to run an operation.
Well, you get a very interesting experience. I would totally suggest a Saskatchewan whitetail trip. Like I said, we could make this a show about big bucks real easy, but we're going to really spend time talking about fishing. The other thing that Barry does, he's a part owner at Tazin Lake Lodge, and if you may have seen the episode. We just released it here not too long ago. I was able to spend a week at Tazin with Brett and Dan Amundsen, and Trevor and Barry are co-owners at Tazin. And how long have you been doing that?
I got involved with Trevor in 2018.
So it's been a few years, and that place you told me was it in pretty rough shape when you guys took over?
Yeah, when Trevor took over with 3 guys before me, it was shut down, and then he was involved with 3 guys that weren't really fishermen, so you know, they didn't really have any clients. So I came in with Trevor, and we, you know, I started advertising a lot, and it's been good.
It's an amazing destination. In fact, we did a podcast while we were up there, so if you want to check that out, you can kind of get a lot of that story. I know we talked about it with Trevor, and Brett and Dan were a part of that. We've had a lot of fun just spending some time there. The lake trout fishing is, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's why I got involved. I've been an outfitter my whole life, even for fishing, and I had a couple camps up in northern Saskatchewan that were, you know, your typical fly-ins where you go in and you catch the 2-pound walleye, and, you know, one after another on the Churchill River system. And I just thought I always want to find a place where there's world-class lake trout fishing, and it definitely was.
What's your biggest lake trout up there?
I caught a 51-pound the very first night on the lake.
Very first night.
Yeah, first night.
It's a kiss of death sometimes.
Yeah, well, I thought, okay, this is the place for me.
Well, it's a pretty special place. Please put it on your bucket list if you want to experience that. But here, Tobin has been on my bucket list for some time. And Anthony, I know when I brought this up, you said the same thing. You're like, yeah, I want to go to Tobin.
Yeah, sign me up.
And why has this been on your list?
I mean, it's just one of those destinations where you know that any fish that swims by can be trophy caliber. I mean, it's known for trophy walleyes, trophy pike. You know, I know there's trophy burbot and other species in the lake too. But
tulibies, you guys wore out the tulibies.
We wore out the tulibies, yeah. But it's just one of those destinations. I think, you know, it probably doesn't, for the mass size of this lake, doesn't get a lot of pressure. You know, there's really good regulations up here, and those fish just tend to grow and grow and grow. And I mean, with the tulibee forage for them to feed on, I think those fish, I mean, all the fish that we caught were fat, healthy. It was unbelievable.
I remember back to the earlier days of In-Fisherman that they came and filmed here once or twice, probably more than that. And the walleye fishing just seems to be second to none, or at least world class where it's worth the drive. But the pike fishing is nothing to sniff at either.
Yeah, that's for sure. That big, the big flats out there. There's plenty of pike and lots of area to go fish. It's
Well, they're all
good.
built. I mean, there wasn't a skinny one in a bunch.
No, that's right. Yeah,
Are there perch here too?
lots of perch. Yeah, in that when you get into the flats there and start fishing them, there's lots of times you can't get your hook or your smelt to the bottom. There's so many perch, just small perch, but there's a lot of them.
Well, that's a great forage base to have, and plus they replenish themselves so quickly. I know that where we're at in central Minnesota, Mille Lacs has had some up and down years, and this is one of the years where they're having just a tremendous year. And one of the guides I worked with there, he's like, we're trying to take as many of this year class out because the next 3 year classes are super strong. So that kind of makes room on the forage base for the perch to continue to grow. And you're not going to get jumbos if you're keeping nice ones, but right now that place is booming, so it definitely is going to indicate good years to come. So Anthony, we made some content here. I'm going to brag on my daughter. We brought Taylor along because I knew that Todd wasn't the pretty face we wanted. I knew you weren't the pretty face that we wanted. I'm certainly not, but she's also not scared of anything, and so I thought, she's excitable. She likes catching big fish when they're biting. And I think a lot of the times that we've gone ice fishing, especially at my house, sometimes we catch them. Not always. And she's the first one to say, this was fun for a while. Let's get out of here. But we need to shoot a lot of pictures. So we put her in the hot seat. And the last couple of days, she's done pretty well. We'll talk about today as we get closer. But what did you think? Did she handle herself okay?
Absolutely. I mean, like you said, fearless, being able to get in there, get out. I mean, when we looked at this trip as it was approaching, the temperature forecast was just miserable.
Sketchy,
I mean, like you said, record lows. And for anybody that's willing to get geared up and go out in those conditions, put in the effort, we spent the day in the shack together, and, we went back and forth catching fish. And, I think anybody that's willing to do that is...
Well, she's always been willing, and I can't blame her when things get tough. Listen, when ice fishing's great, it's awesome. Like, I love every minute of it. But when it's not good, it's a quick pack up and get the hell out. It sucks. I mean, it can be brutal on your equipment, your hands. But anyway, so we started out just in front of Barry's Lodge here, and I think we kind of knocked our walleye off of the list pretty quickly, but Todd caught a nice pike to begin with. We got some great photos of that. But today turned into kind of an adventure, and this is really what I had dreamed of. I wanted to make a long snowmobile run, and we had to wait because the weather just wasn't conducive to making I don't know, what'd you say, 8 or 9 miles, Barry?
Yeah.
Which doesn't seem very far, but when you're on a sled and you're on an open lake with wind and, drifts of snow, you got to kind of take it easy. But we were able to run, would you call that down the lake?
Yeah.
We went down the lake.
Yeah.
God, you can't hardly see anything out there now. That wind's picked up so much. So we got out of there when we should have. But so we went down the ways to the flats, as Barry explained, and we put out some tip ups, and God, we had a great time.
It was pretty epic. Like you said, the scenery is second to none. I mean, that was really what I was looking forward to, is getting away from, any civilization. You're driving along the cliffs and you got the trees, the epic backdrops for some of our photos. That was really the goal of the trip.
Mm-hmm. So this is an impoundment. Does it, do you feel like the water level fluctuates very much here? Or is it pretty standard?
No, it'll fluctuate quite a bit, especially in the summertime. It seems like it'll go up a foot or two quite often.
Mm-hmm. But the ice seems very normal. Is there an ice heave on this lake?
I don't think there is one this year, which is surprising. Usually there is.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So that's a year-to-year thing. Is that? Do you think? You had clear ice all the way to the bottom? So did ice over pretty early?
Yeah, and I think maybe that what helped it is we had a big snowfall and the lake wasn't froze over, so that was nice. And then it got super cold, and the lake froze over with no snow. Mm-hmm. And we got lots of good ice right away.
Well, and last year we didn't have you said you had a record. Well, I don't know if it's record worthy, but it was almost zero snow.
Yeah, and we had warm temperatures. We still ended up with quite a bit of ice. Maybe 3 feet or something. But yeah, there was a couple ice heaves, and come into March they got kind of dangerous crossing them.
Mm-hmm. What's your average ice depth here?
This year is probably average. Mm-hmm. So by the time March comes around, or the end of March, when fishing season's over, I don't know what we'd have right now. It must be 3 feet, I guess, anyway.
You're at the...
Something
Yeah,
like
we were
that.
right at the extension, so
Yeah.
probably about 36 inches.
Yeah. We might get a little, maybe even another foot of ice by the time March comes.
Oof.
Yeah.
So what's the general ice out date here?
It would be about probably about first part of May.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Are the pike eager to bite then too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Everything's eager to bite then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, as the year goes on, this is a renowned fishery for anybody that loves to enjoy the open water period as well. I'm not real familiar with northern impoundment. I realize that they're all over the country, or the North America in general. Do you feel like this fish is different than, say, a natural lake, or is it pretty straightforward?
Well, definitely different. Like you say, this lake, when they flooded this lake in the 60s, they didn't clear any timber. They just took a cat and they just plowed all the timber over. So it's our whole, the structure of this lake on the bottom is solid trees. It's getting a little better now, but it's tougher fishing.
Were there penetrations through the ice for a while?
Oh yeah, lots. Yeah,
I know the ice really messes up the trees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I suppose a lot of those are kind of deadhead or widowmakers, as we call them. So going up north, you got to be, or going that way, you've got to be careful.
Yeah, and we would have driftwood on the shore, every year. We're probably 20 foot thick, so it's getting better as time goes on. But there was a lot of timber at the bottom of this lake.
Well, I want to talk with you about one of your other passions, and this is something that fascinates me. You're a pilot, and this is something you spend you told me yourself. It's something you care an awful lot about, and I'm not looking for any like death-defying incidences, but let's talk a little bit about that. What's your you have a plane? What do you fly? Bush pilot stuff?
Yeah. So when I got out of high school, of course, I always wanted to be an outfitter. So I thought, well, I'll go get my pilot's license. And right out of high school, I went and worked for a friend of mine and his dad. They own an air service up at Pelican Arrows. So we flew everything.
Mm-hmm.
We flew firefighters. We did medevacs. We flew fish. There's a commercial fish place there. We flew
when you
fishermen.
flew fish, what you mean, like to stock?
Buckets of fish, dead fish. They're netting them.
Okay.
Yeah, up in that Churchill River system. We did that steady. We would haul ice out and then bring the fish back and fill the plane right full as it would get with fish. Yeah. So, and that North Country is beautiful. So that really, it was just, it hooked you,
Mm-hmm.
I would have probably stayed there forever if my wife wouldn't want to move out of there.
So you've when you first went to Tazin, did you fly in there?
No. I met Trevor at a gas station in Nipawin here and started talking about Tazin, and I bought Tazin sight unseen. So I didn't even know. I just knew the fishing was good. I saw the videos, and I saw a few years before that they caught that lake trout that was ounces off a world record, and I talked to Trevor and his partners wanted out, so I'm like, okay, I guess I'm in. I didn't even go up there. So when I caught that fish, that was the first night on the lake. First time I saw Tazin or fish Tazin.
Yeah, like I said, spoiled rotten right out the gate. So is your I guess what's your favorite way to fly? I don't even know what to ask. Pardon me. I'm not a pilot. Well, I'm a drone pilot.
Yeah,
I told you that.
Yeah.
I took off on the porch over here.
Yeah.
Not
That's
that impressive. What? Tell me about what you like to fly.
Floats. Yeah, floats are my favorite. The freedom of going anywhere. Like you want to drop in. We have some really special places up north where we go and. One place up north, we have a few boats stashed up. It's up in the territories about 100 miles. And, it's just a special place to go in there and camp for a week. And like you say, get away from, there's nothing there. And the fishing is phenomenal. And, yeah, it's you can get to some beautiful places in the world in a float plane.
That is 100% right. Have you been on a fly-in, Anthony?
I have been on a fly-in, and it was one of the greatest 4-day stretches where there's no cell phones, there's no television, there's no nothing. I mean, the first day you get a little bit of that like faint, like you thought your cell phone maybe went off, and then you just kind of leave it in the cabin or maybe bring it with to take some photos. But it was just an amazing place to get away, disconnect from everything and just enjoy time with a great group of fishermen.
In just a few days, I will be helping my in-laws put the dock in at their lake cabin, and I guarantee you I'm going to be in and out of the water a dozen times at least. Whether you're doing grunt work like that or enjoying a day fishing your favorite shoreline, stream, or river, you need gear that you can trust and keep you dry. LL Bean's waders will do just that, and not for just this year. These things are built to last. Their super seam technology eliminates all those tiny pinholes that traditionally stitched and taped seams create, which results in seams that are 50% stronger. These things are built tough, comfy enough for all-day wear, and stylish enough to make the frogs and fish jealous. Hey, you can learn more at llbean.com.
My first fly-in ever was to Tazin.
Really?
First time.
Wow.
And that was quite the place to fly into.
Huh.
It really was.
That shocks me.
They don't let me go out of the country very often. That's fair. So talk a little bit about some. I want some stories. This is what intrigues me: is when you're going to encounter things, you're going to see things that the average person is just not going to see because of the. It's not like flying a jetliner into an airport. You got to find the right stretch. Talk a little bit about on any given day. How do you pick a landing destination on a lake?
Well. Northern Saskatchewan is very easy. You can, there's just lake after lake after lake. So basically, you fly into the wind on landing, and there's a landing strip everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very safe way to travel. In fact, I do have a story one time here.
Yeah.
I was flying up north, going to Pelican, and I had my son with me. We were going fishing, and he was about 4 years old, and blew the motor in the plane. I'm flying along, and I'm just thinking to myself,
You blew the motor.
Yeah, the motor just seized up. What happened is a ball bearing fell off of the starter and seized on the crankshaft, and it seized solid. But just before that, I'm flying along, and he was sleeping. And I'm flying along, and I'm thinking, what a beautiful day, It was calm, and the plane sounded so good, You're flying along, and all of a sudden the prop just stops dead. And I'm like, whoa.
Whoa, yeah.
Reach down, nothing. So anyway, look around, and of course I was between Tazin Lake and Pelican Arrows, and there was a nice strip of water there to land in. I landed, and he woke up all excited. He's like, "Okay, let's get fishing, eh?" And I'm like, "Well, not quite." And funny part of that story is that I was from there, kind of. So this boatload of natives going to the bar, all of a sudden they come around this corner, they're like, "Barry, how's it going?" I'm like, "Not bad, but
You were alive.
Yeah.
So did you? The propeller turns off. How high up at this point are you? Are you cruising altitude?
Yeah, not very high. You never really went in a float plane. You don't go over 2,500 feet, so you got to find a spot fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you just turned the key and the engine didn't start.
Yeah.
Nothing.
So just started looking for a place to land, and
the way that they're built, I suppose, are you trained to fly without the motor, or because the plane will, I don't want to say float, but essentially you can control it to some extent, obviously.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's and that's why I was fortunate that I flew commercially for out of high school, because you're current enough to be able to do something like that with no problems at all. It's
I would have panicked. Oh, the propeller shut off while you're in the air. So you put it down on the lake. Did you were you able to pick exactly where you wanted to end up and then hop off? It wasn't. You really could direct it that far.
Yeah, I was lucky. It was a fairly strong breeze, so I landed on the water. And I didn't realize I must have had quite a bit of adrenaline going, that's for sure, even though I didn't know it. But I jumped out on the float and I started paddling because we were drifted back into shore. And I ended up breaking my paddle. And that's just when this boat came around the corner. So he came around the corner, hooked onto me, and dragged me into this nice little bay. And
thank God.
It was all good. Yeah.
Gee whiz. So a lot of these pick any destination kind of thing. You don't have to give me any specific lakes, but other than the Northwest Territories destination, can you do do you ever do day trips or a overnighter kind of thing?
Oh yeah. Well, even around Tazin, 2 or 3 years ago, me and a few buddies went up around there for a week, and we flew around there, and we went to Lefty Falls, which is one of the biggest waterfalls in Saskatchewan, and the grayling fishing is phenomenal. Went to the Athabasca sand dunes, and there's just so many places to venture around out, in northern Saskatchewan.
The sand dunes were. I don't know if we talked about this. Did they? Maybe the pilot told me. Did they do some filming there recently for the Dunes movie?
Yeah, that's what Brett was telling me.
I've never. We flew over them when we went out of Tazin, but you've been out there personally and walked around?
Yeah. We stopped the float planes by, and it's funny because they're huge. They run for hundreds of miles, and we pulled up on shore there, and all of a sudden we look over and there's a volleyball. We're like, I guess we're in the right spot. Yeah, walked around and whatever, but it's just a cool thing to do for an afternoon.
Hundreds of miles, you say?
Yeah.
What do you suppose is the geological reason they're there?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether it blew there in the ice ages or what happened, but it's the biggest, the biggest active desert or something in the world,
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Might have to go check that out. I don't know. That's pretty interesting to me. But that Lake Athabasca is pretty impressive. And I just know that it doesn't take much wind to create a chop on a lake like that, or really any of the lakes of this size. So if you're approaching a lake, you want to land with the wind kind of coming into your head, right? So how big a waves is too dangerous?
You don't want to see whitecaps, or big rollers are bad too, You can do some damage hitting too hard. You want to grease it on and make a nice smooth landing. You don't want to be hitting anything too hard.
Are you making that decision while you're in the cockpit, or is that something you can kind of plan ahead for when you look at the forecast? Or
yeah, no more in the cockpit. Yeah, you're flying in and you're looking around for either a nice quiet bay to land in, or if it's just too bad. And that's the one thing. Most of these camps, like say Tazin or even the ones on Lake Athabasca and stuff, they're all built to be float plane friendly.
Okay, so they're accommodating the most likely wind.
Yeah, for sure. They're built there for a reason, because without a float plane, you don't do anything.
Have you ever had to make an extra long taxi, like you kind of missed the mark and it wasn't worth taking off again, where you just had to kind of troll around for a while?
No, I don't think so. Maybe at the odd time I've been a little too heavy. And had to turn around and take another run at it or something, but yeah.
What about taking off? That was an impressive feeling when you're on that lake. Is there something that occurs? I guess structurally, I'm curious about the airplane and the floats. Is there something that changes on the bottom side of those floats so you can take off? Is there a rudder that goes down when you're steering? How does that all work?
No, there's a keel on the float, and it's just like a boat. Once you get it on the step, that's how you gain speed and take off.
Okay. I noticed that when we started getting going pretty quickly, like the plane lifted in the water. It wasn't ready to take off, but it really had to plow water to get started. Man, you think about that propeller, all the power that goes through that thing to move that plane has got to be incredible.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like something like, say, a Beaver, has 450 horsepower and a big, thick wing. They're de Havilland airplane. They're just built to fly. Those old bush planes they're built to fly.
So have you done the land? Like what do they call those? Like a Cub? Have you done that before?
I've flown a Cub a little bit, not too much though. Most of my time is either on floats or on skis.
Okay, skis.
Yeah, a lot on skis. Like at Pelican, we did like the medevac, and in the winter we hauled fish. So yeah, we did a lot of work on skis too.
I'm sorry to have to go here. This is just my ignorance. So Taylor is on the cross-country ski team, or the Nordic ski team, and they wax her skis for her to to get grip and to be fast or whatever. Do you wax the skis on your plane?
No. But originally they were aluminum, and now you put the Teflon on the bottom, which makes it a lot nicer.
How is that to land compared to water?
It's a little trickier because in the wintertime it's a little harder to see where the wind is exactly. In the summertime when the water's coming, you always have that dead spot where the wind is coming from. But in the wintertime, it's a little tougher to get a good headwind sometimes, or pick a nice smooth landing because it's harder to see the snow where the drifts are.
Do you get some kind of report, like if you're going to land on a frozen lake? I mean, if it's solid ice, that's probably not going to be super good for skis. Or can you do that? without snow, if there's very little snow.
Yeah, it's tougher. It's tougher to steer, because especially if you're not directly into the wind. Say the wind's coming to you from the side, it's wanting to push you or make you turn. So you need that snow on the ground to keep you on the ground.
So if you're going to a place that's fairly remote, I assume you can just, hey, we've got 15 inches of snow here. You're going to assume there's that much or more north or somewhere else.
Yeah.
Do you ever get in a situation where you look? Is there a way to check snow conditions at these other places? Do people keep track of that?
Basically, aviation's a small world. So you got a buddy that lives in Pelican or a buddy that lives in Flin Flon, and you say, hey, what's the weather there like today? And he tells you, and that's basically how you tell the weather,
How long ago did you do the medevac thing?
It would have been right when I started out of school. So, and then I flew for them for about 4 or 5 years.
Okay. I got a story I want to ask you about. So,
okay.
I'm trying to think here. So, we lived in Minot, North Dakota for our first 3 years of marriage, and I met a couple buddies there that were hardcore fishermen and hunters. They lived for that. And my buddy Jay, his dad had been going to Alberts Lake, outside of Flin Flon. Does that ring a bell?
No.
Okay.
No, Alberts.
Well, I went 2 years in a row. I packed way too much gear. It's a long story, but the bottom line is they would take 2 rods and a box full of spoons and a box full of chartreuse quarter-ounce jigs and catch more walleyes and pike than I ever would. And I took a whole stack of trays. Angler has to take more than he needs. Terry, Jay's dad, had been there for 25 years, and we had ended up moving back to Iowa. And he'd been making this trip forever, and Terry was making the portage between the 2 lakes with the canoes and the 4-wheeler, and he sat down on a log and he died, had a heart attack. And so they had to get Terry and the crew out of there in a pretty sticky situation. And I mean, like I say, this would have been in 2005, 6, 7 ballpark time. But how in that situation did they get a hold of somebody? If they need to have a satellite phone, but like what kind of person needs to come in to deal with that?
Well, basically, the RCMP has to come in first, and they won't touch the body until a coroner comes in. I've had to fly coroners in quite a few times, and yeah. So that's basically once the RCMP come in, and then the coroner, and then load the body up in the plane and take it home. And
it's a pretty sad ordeal, but I think if we would kind of pick how we're going to go, that'd be a good way to go.
Yeah.
Well, Terry, Jay and I have talked about this. I've told him, I said, I'd love to go back. It was such an amazing trip, one I'll never forget. I got a hook in my nipple on one of those trips. That's a true story. I guess we're probably into this now. Do you want to hear that story?
Sure.
Okay. It's a good story. And if I've told this on this podcast before, I'm not so sorry, because that's just the way things are going. This is made for podcasting. We went to Alberts Lake, and I took a suic, which is a muskie lure, and I hadn't caught a lot of muskies by then. I thought I want to catch something on this $25 lure I bought. So I did. I threw it and caught a nice pike on it. And we're fishing out of, I guess there were 12 or 14 foot flat back canoes, and we had a little 4 or 5 horse motor on it. So I wanted to take a picture, and I had, in those days, there were no phones, there were no digital cameras. I had one of those little disposable Kodak cameras, right, that you had to wind up to shoot every time. And had my buddies been the photographers that they should have been, they would have shot photos as this went down. But I told my buddy Josh, I said, hey, I want you to take a picture of this fish, because the suic the back hook was on its beak, and it was hooked 3 times down its back. I thought, hey, this would be a cool picture. So I picked the pike up by the belly, which was a terrible idea. And it flopped like they do, and I clutched it. Well, he came off of 2 of the hooks, and the back hook, I'm kind of having flashbacks here. One of the hooks went through my shirt, into my nipple, and out of the nipple. Through it. And the fish was still on the other end. Have you ever spilled coffee on your lap while you're driving? Yeah, that's happened. Well, all you can do is scream. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing I've ever done. and finally it did settle down enough to where we could get the fish off of it. But in that process, you know how those pike, they do the gator spin, right? That pike is spinning like crazy, and my shirt got twisted up. I don't understand how I didn't like actually lose my nipple. For some reason, it was still there after all this was said and done. But we had to, and it didn't hurt after the fish was gone, so we had to cut the T-shirt away to get to the hook, and it came right out. It was no big deal. There's very little blood. The pain was gone. Like, it was not like that wasn't the thing. But I had to fish for the rest of the day with a big circle around where my nipple was. So, not really my proudest moment. But if that would have been one of them, I'd have shot all kinds of pictures of that. But they were respectful when maybe they shouldn't have. But do you have a nipple story?
No nipple stories.
Like
I mean, plenty of fish injuries. I mean, I think anybody that's fished around, big pike, predator fish. I mean, Taylor got to experience it today.
Yeah, she got broke in. She got the e-socks cuts on the knuckles, and that's a funny story too. I'll see if I can get the picture put in here for this podcast. But there was a blood trail from the hole where she caught that fish all the way back into the house, and then she had 2 rags that were just drenched in blood. I mean, I think it might be painful a little bit, but for the most part. Well, I'll tell you this much: if my son were here, he'd have been passed. We'd had a medevac to get him out of here because he would have passed out. But that does happen. If you're going to be out there, you are going to have some accidents. And today, Anthony, I'm grateful you had your kit. And we are bouncing back and forth here a little bit, but we were 8 miles down the lake, and who knows what could have gone wrong, and things could have gotten a lot worse. But you take something with you to make sure you can cover those ends. So what's your go-to first aid kit?
Yeah, I mean, just having the basics, the bandages, I had some wipes to clean it off. I've always got electrical tape and zip ties in my backpack, because if you can't fix it with those, you're probably going to be in a little bit more trouble than you need. But really just having the basics, a few basic tools, a Leatherman, just having what you need.
Go through some of those basics. If you're going to be in remote Canada for an ice fishing first aid kit, what do you got to have?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the things that I mentioned, I've even got, small little packets of Advil, Tylenol. You never know when you're out on the lake how you're going to react, or, you slip and bump your head or twist an ankle or something. Those little things can keep you out on the ice for the rest of the day before you make it back to camp. You don't have to make a long journey. Just being prepared and having those things can really save a day.
Electrical tape has been used ice fishing or softwater fishing. That is like your immediate Band-Aid.
Absolutely,
but don't put it on too tight. I've learned that lesson the hard way.
Right, and usually, luckily I've been able to put a bandage on first and then electrical tape just to hold it in place, because, going straight electrical tape, you're probably not going to be absorbing much of the blood that you're trying to soak up with a Band-Aid.
I've got another story, and this goes back to my high school days. We visited, I believe it was Red Lake in Ontario. I'm not exactly sure the destination of the resort we stayed at, but we were planning to keep a bunch of pike, but we put them on a stringer. Inexperienced, I didn't know what I was doing. And you just drag the pike and the walleyes along. Well, those pike, they'd come back to life and they'd rip their lips off on the stringer. Like, you'd pull it in and there's like a chunk of pike lip on there. It's like, well, what are we going to do? So we ended up catching a pretty decent one. And again, I'd have to really dig through some of my photo archives to find this, but we decided to whack it on the head with a paddle so that it wouldn't come back to life. Well, smart me, I told my brother, I'm like, I'm just going to hold the pike, okay, and you just crack it on the head with the paddle. Well, he did, and my finger was far enough in there that he literally knocked the top teeth into my finger. And I told you this while we were out there. On the right day, it is still, and this is 30 years later, still tender on that spot for some reason. That pike didn't get off the stringer, but some days you just gotta grin and bear it. So if you're I'm curious about what you would have. Do you have like a survival kit, if you will, anytime you fly?
Yeah, you have a survival kit in the plane at all times.
Okay.
Enough food and last you a few days, and basics.
What kind of food do you keep in a satchel there?
Oh, like dried food, something they just got to pour water in, and yeah.
Do you like any of it?
Well, you know what? It's not that bad.
I've had those military MREs. Those things can be pretty good.
Yeah, they're okay.
But you got to have water to
boil water. Yeah.
So do you have a little like what do they call those things now? The jet boils, something like that.
No, but that would be a good idea.
Yeah,
would be a good idea.
Add it to your list.
Matches and wood.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What? Tell me another plane story. I could ask you this stuff all along.
I have a funny story. I don't know if I should tell this, in real life, because it's kind of crazy, but whatever, right?
Yeah. This is the time.
Talking about the medevacs. My very first medevac. I just got my commercial license, and my buddy Kelly tells me, Barry, you got to get up here right away. We're busy, hey? Okay, so I jump in the car, drive to Pelican. I get there. He says, you got to medevac this lady from Tazin Lake to Flin Flon. Okay. Jump in the 185, start her up, away I go. So I go up to the dock, and here this half-ton's backing in, and this lady in the back of the truck is passed out. And so I'm young and stupid, whatever. I didn't have any idea, so I pull the plane up the dock, load her up. She loads her up in the back seat, put the seatbelt on her. Her name was... I'll never forget her in my entire life. So anyway, I'm flying along, and she was really drunk, like passed out drunk, but she had some problems too. I don't know, something about her seizures and stuff like that. And so I'm flying along, and all of a sudden I look back, and she's starting to throw up. And I'm like, oh no, So I'm flying with one hand, and I have those little barf bags, and I'm holding them up to her mouth and filling them up and putting them down, and pretty soon I'm running out of barf bags, So I'm like, oh no, now what, hey? So, and there's snuff, she's chewing snuff, and it was great. So anyway, I keep going along, and we're almost to Flin Flon, and she's still throwing up. I just took her shirt and I put it over top of her head.
Keep it off the plane seats.
I got the Flin Flon, and the ambulance was waiting there for me, and I opened up the plane door, and they're just like, what is this, Took a pail out of the back of the plane, put some water in it, flushed the bottom of the floor of the plane out, and away I went. That was my very first medevac commercial flying.
Oh, that is awesome.
Welcome to bush flying.
You know what I'm thinking of right then and there? He's like, Harry, get me another bottle. It's filling up quick.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So, what kind of snuff? I mean,
Copenhagen. They all chewed Copenhagen.
But she was passed out with Copenhagen in there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It stunk so bad of Copenhagen and barf that...
I can't imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Barry's just like, give me some fish in this plane or something. This is way worse than that.
Oh, yeah, totally. That was my very first commercial flight.
Oofta. Do you remember how many bags you filled up?
Oh, I think I had about 3 or 4.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, it was unbelievable. The smell was just something else.
Man, that's the day you'll be glad you had a COVID mask or something like that. Oh. I feel like the whole lifestyle of what the important part of living here is you kind of gotta live life on the edge. You have extreme conditions, especially in the winter, and if you're going to get through it, you have to have a desire to be a part of it. And if you're going to do that, you got to have the right equipment to stay warm, stay safe. If something happens, have a plan. Have you ever broke down a snowmobile in the middle of a lake?
Oh yeah, plenty of times.
Do you just walk?
Yeah, I walk, or lots of times I guess you're always with a buddy.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, usually when you're going fishing or whatever, back when we did a lot of fishing as kids, we were driving elans, single cylinder elans that going 20 miles into some remote lake and cross 10 miles of slush.
Is that a brand of a snowmobile?
Skidoo, yeah. They were a Skidoo. They were a single cylinder Skidoo. 250 elan they were called, and they up in the north they were just the work machine of the north.
Reliable, I suppose. Yeah,
and easy. When we used to do ice in the wintertime, we would go to these camps and cut ice with a chainsaw and fill the big ice huts or whatever. those elands are so nice and small, you could take the motor off, take the handlebars off, in about 5 minutes, throw it in the back of the plane and fly to the next lake, put it back together.
So you're breaking it down between trips.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they were just so dependable and so easy to work on, You got spark, you got gas, away you go.
Were they fast?
No.
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 I mean, you don't need fast sometimes. But...
Yeah, they were slow.
So what was the one you're running today?
That's Bravo.
Okay.
Yeah.
What year was that, do you think?
It's about a 1980.
All right. And
Yeah.
what years were the ones you were mentioning a second ago?
A little older, about 70, 75.
Okay.
I don't know when they quit making them, but...
It's amazing to me the I don't know, the ability to travel through snow, the different types of equipment that you can have. We've talked a little bit about this, the snowmobiles here, but that what's that thing we were talking about the other night?
Snow dog.
The snow dog, yeah, where it's like a dog sled with a motor without the dogs, obviously. And you've used these before.
I've never used one, but I've seen them being used, and I know several people that have them, and they really like them. It's just more convenient than having to pull a trailer, load a snowmobile. They can put it into the back of a truck or onto a hitch hauler on an SUV.
Was that a trip today? Could you make it that far with one of those?
You probably could. Would I want to? Probably not.
No. Definitely having heated grips. Did they have those on those old snowmobiles? Probably not. Or hot hands back in the day?
Yeah,
no hot hands.
No.
Have you ever been stranded in the snow somewhere or in the winter?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. A lot of times. That was just part of daily fishing or flying or whatever. There was so many times you'd be somewhere and you just... you were just stuck there for the night. And
so you spent the night out in the winter woods?
Oh, yeah, lots of times.
I want a story.
Well, I guess I haven't recently, but, let's say a few years back, we flew into this lake and we were on floats and we were going to, put the camp away for winter. Woke up in the morning and the whole lake was frozen over. We're just like,
Oh.
Now what,
Yeah, you're not breaking ice, I
No.
suppose.
So we got the boat back out there and we had an axe and we're trying to chop ourselves a runway and didn't work, of course.
Well,
so we had to wait for the wind to kind of pick up.
So elaborate on that for a minute. You're thinking we're going to just chop a runway. Mm-hmm. How much do you think you needed to get the plane up?
Well, how hard it was, the less the better. Like it was, we thought, oh yeah, we'll just chop a nice little runway here and
chop a runway.
Yeah, and it was hard going.
Anyways,
yeah. So we ended up, that didn't work. So we just stuck it out, and it happens quite often. Last year, actually, we got stranded. We went up to a little lake in northern Saskatchewan here, and my buddy has a cabin on this one lake, and we were flying his plane, and actually I was flying. And we tried to make it in there, and the weather was just too bad, So we're like, okay. So we went back to this other little lake, a little walleye lake, and thought, well, we'll fish for the afternoon. Maybe the weather will clear, and we'll go back and try it again. And it didn't. So there we were in this lake, sitting in the middle, and it was cold. And we're like, now what? Where are we going to stay? I don't know. We're figured whatever. So we just... hunkered down. We had a tarp and started a big fire, and all of a sudden in the morning the weather cleared up and we went to his cabin and went fishing for a couple days.
And this was on water?
No,
not ice.
Ice, yeah.
So you just kind of pulled the plane into the shore and...
Yeah, we were parked right on the shore where we were fishing, and yeah.
So you had a tarp along with you?
Mm-hmm.
What do you prefer for that? I mean, not just the standard old blue tarps, or does that work?
Yeah. We just set up a tarp and started a great big fire to keep warm and hunkered down for the night, and then the next morning weather was good and we went to his cabin and started the generator and got warm.
I think this is a great story. I don't know that I'd want to have to experience that, but you need to go prepared for that, don't you?
Oh yeah, it's just I think you're always prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing that's out of the ordinary, and especially in bush flying, you're gonna expect bad weather and getting stranded and stuff like that.
So I'm curious to know, does the plane itself change? Do you put skis on where the floats were? Do you have a completely different plane for that time of year?
What do you mean?
You just swap the floats for skis?
Yeah, yeah.
How do you do that?
You just lift it up and unbolt the floats and put the gear legs back on and put skis on it, and away you go. Yeah.
I have so many questions. Where do you store the skis? In the attic of the garage, or
Yeah,
yeah, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
How long are they? As long as the plane? About the same as the floats, I'd assume, huh?
No. The skis are only about might be 3 feet long at the most.
No kidding.
Yeah. You put like one on each on the main gear, and then you have a little tail ski on where your back tire goes.
I would need to see this. That's fascinating to me. So that same plane that you fly in the summer, you fly in the winter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we've talked about it. Like, we're gonna figure out how to fly into Tazin at some point.
During the winter?
Yeah.
Could you imagine?
Oh.
We just need a winter like last winter where it's nice and mild. There's not a ton of
Yeah.
snow.
I just feel that the culture here of surviving the winter is almost a sport to an extent of you enjoy you have to enjoy the battle to an extent, right? There's a part of the survival aspect of living here that is part of life.
Yeah, it is. It's just part of living here. That's right. Like everybody, just like you say the other day when you're 40 below, you got freezing water lines and whatever. It happens to everybody. Yeah.
Well, it's surprising both ways, though. I mean, we're looking at in Brainerd, we're going to have rain on Sunday. I think we're going to get rid of the snow, but it's going to warm up similarly here. You're going to have above freezing temperatures, and it's going to be quite the relief.
Yeah. I wish. It's funny because this weather has come that way in the last 10 years. It used to be, everything was calm, and now it's just so erratic that it seems to be getting harsher.
Yeah, well,
It's from one extreme to the next, right? Like it's
harsh is the word.
Yeah.
It really was last couple of days. Boy, Anthony, one of the questions I wanted to ask you about is I know that you've been deeply involved in the outdoors for the bulk of your life, but you do a little podcast yourself, and it's pretty good. We listened to a couple episodes on the way up just so that I could at least. I thought I would listen and get myself familiar with who you are and what you do, but then we're like listening to a second one, and then we're starting a third one, and I told Taylor, I'm like, don't tell him we listen to these on the way up here because I don't want him to think we're just trying to fit in. But you guys do a pretty fun podcast too.
Yeah, Eskimo. We have the Shack Talk podcast. I have a great co-host, Kyle Agri. We love to, we only do probably about 10 episodes a season. We've got a lot of great guests. We get to bring on guys that are part of the team, a part of the industry, and really just have a great conversation. And selfishly, Kyle and I, we love to just sit back and listen to these guys and absorb the information that they're willing to share. They've always got a lot of great stories. We had a few guys on that talk about fish recipes and different things, and I'm always just scribbling down, trying to take in as much information as I can, and really just sit back and listen. But it's great. I've loved being a part of it, and I know you do as well. So it's great just to have those conversations.
That's what we do in the podcast world. We interview each other. That way we've got added content when it gets down to it. But you were in, was it Viking Lodge this year, December?
No, I wasn't in Viking Lodge, but we interviewed Mac from Viking Lodge.
Right.
Yeah, somewhere that I've been before, up to Athapap in Manitoba. So we interviewed Mac. It's someone I had met before. They're running a great program over there. It's somewhere that I want to get back to, and it's just fun to talk to people that are living in these extreme conditions, and their season goes till the end of April, and just hard to imagine fishing for that long because walleye season's closed in Minnesota in a couple of days.
That's right. Yep, it's coming up. I think it's next week. But okay, that's right. You went to Winnipeg though this year, so that's an amazing fishery, but it's not really that far from Fargo. How long does it take you to get there?
No, it's a little over 4 hours. I used to fish Lake of the Woods a lot. Another great fishery, but the way that Winnipeg is just, shaped up with the amount of fish, the quality of the fish, the size of the fish, being within a similar distance for me, it's just been an amazing opportunity. And I think that fishery too is a growing fishery. There's a lot more, guide services. They're starting to offer some of the the similar trips to Lake of the Woods with some sleeper houses, and they're just kind of scratching the surface with some of that. But yeah, it's an incredible fishery.
Have you ever done a podcast in a wheelhouse or anything like that?
Yeah, we've done one in a wheelhouse. We've actually got an opportunity. Hopefully, maybe next year we'll be doing one on Winnipeg in a wheelhouse.
God, that sounds great.
Really looking forward to that because, sit here and record a podcast and maybe have
the rattle reel go off
or something. Pull in a big greenback.
God, what a cool place. We went 2 summers ago, fished with Donovan, and we did the catfish thing for 2 days, and then we did the walleye thing in Winnipeg. And it might be my biggest walleye ever. I don't remember exactly what the measurements were. In fact, we probably didn't measure it, but we closed our show out with it, which is nice. I just used the rod and reel. I'm not sure that I had anything to do with it otherwise, but that's a fishery that's worth going to, and I feel like it's pretty accessible and not super difficult to understand. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, there's some challenges. I mean, I would say it's a fairly, there's structure on the lake, but it's fairly featureless. It's a big basin, the southern basin anyway, where most of the people are fishing. But, stopping at any of the local bait shops, they're willing to give you information where the bite's been good. A lot of the accesses, there's a lot of information out on social media on where people are getting on and off the lake. That seems to be the biggest issue is, there's so much wind up there that a lot of the accesses get drifted in. You might be only able to get out with track machines, snowmobiles. Sometimes, I would say a lot of the times those Canadians are pretty hard too, where they're trying to get out with wheeled vehicles if they can. So they're usually busting a trail or getting out there somehow. But yeah, it seems like there's a lot more information readily available for somebody that's looking to get out there and do it. And like you said, there's a lot of great guides on the lake as well. Those guys put in the fishing every day. They know where those fish are. They know how to target them.
Yeah, and I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to hire a guide to do. Donovan Pierce has been a good friend of In-Fisherman for a long time, and I know there's numbers of other anglers up there that worked with Doug and the crew. But, I mean, spend the money. Have someone show you where you're at or take advantage of their amenities. I mean, having a house, having some insider knowledge at least get you on some fish, especially if you're going to do a long weekend. You want to make the most of that time. Now, I know in your case, you guys probably you got the right kind of friends, and we're going to go out and catch them and not necessarily have to do the outfitting thing, but you got both options there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to know people, and I think too that it's just amazing the way just the community up there networks together. And if anybody has any issues, I mean, I know that there's a Facebook page and people will go on there and they'll be like, "Hey, I'm stuck here. Can somebody come help me?"
Here's my coordinates.
Within 15 minutes, there'll be somebody responding. "Yep, I'm on my way. It'll be an hour or whatever." It's amazing just the community up there that's willing to help out.
That's the thing. And Barry, you mentioned that it's like if you're a pilot, the community's pretty small. I feel like the ice fishing community is exactly the same thing, where you can reach out to people, and I don't feel like people are as greedy, if you will, about their spots, or they're at least willing to give you a heads up. And I think that every special interest group has its core of great people. But from my experience, ice fishing in general seems to be, I guess, the most willing to be supportive. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree. We're all out there doing the same thing. We enjoy the same passion. I might not give you my exact GPS coordinates, but I'm going to give you a general area. And, it's an area to get you started. And that's usually what I'm just looking for is like, which part of the lake has been good, or what have you been hearing? Because that just helps you formulate a starting point. And from there, it's easier to break down the water, where you look at a lake like Lake Winnipeg, Tobin Lake, for example. I mean, it's a huge body of water, and having just a little bit of information on, where to maybe look for, or a certain depth range, where the fish might be this time of year, it just helps that much more.
Well, there's not mapping, so you come to a place like this, it's good to have a local connection, have some insider knowledge, and know where to start anyways. You've done a little mapping here, haven't you?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
I mean, it'd take a lifetime to map this place, though, if you wanted to get every inch of it.
Yeah, it would be nice if it would come out with a map someday, but...
You also don't want people to have too much information. We're going to watch we're going to put the mics down here a minute, watch the USA-Canada Championship. Who do you think's going to win?
Canada.
Canada?
USA, baby.
That's right. See, we got a little something
We
going.
got a little drama in the household already.
It's going to be a good time. But listen, if you're ever looking for an epic adventure, whether you want to chase whitetails, if you want to go to Tazin Lake, I have to recommend Tazin. It is one of the greatest destinations in the North American continent. You can look up Barry Prall. You can look up Brett and Dan and Trevor and the crew at Tazin. If you want an epic fly-in, world-class lake trout experience, I've got to recommend it. If you want to come hunt whitetails, Barry, where can they find your information?
Yeah, I guess my webpage, trailsandoutfitters.com. All the info's on there, my phone number and everything else.
So you've hooked us up with an ice trip. Is that something you do on a regular basis?
Well, I don't know what I guess so. Sure.
Might be
I would
worth
come
it.
up. Yeah, sure. If anybody wanted to come up, I'd be more than willing to take you out.
Well, look him up. Barry Prall. He's a good friend. He's a great angler. We've had a great time here. If you want to learn more about Eskimo products, where can they look, Anthony?
EskimoIceFishingGear.com. Check out our social media. We have a very active social media team. It's putting out great content as well. So it's always great to hear feedback from the consumers as well. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we talked about this weekend, we talked about little changes in products or different things you'd like to see, and all of that goes to our design and engineer team. They love to hear that feedback because they just want to make the products better for the end consumer.
Well, the end result, my opinion, is through the roof right now because we dealt with some pretty serious conditions, and we're going home with intact gear, which I'm happy about. We've got a couple weeks left of good ice fishing in Minnesota, probably a month. But listen, a lot of the content that we've come out with here over the last couple weeks, you're going to see in the 2025 Ice Guide and the Tactical Ice Guide that we'll publish late 2025. There's going to be a story about our experience here. This podcast will serve as a good example of what we've done. But we had a great time, a lot of great photos. You'll get to see some of those on social media. And then just stay up to date at infisherman.com. It's one of our favorite places. This is Inside Bassmaster from Anthony Kleinwachter, from Barry Prall. We're here at Trails End Outfitters on Tobin Lake. Thanks for listening in. We'll catch you here at the next one.